Welcome back to The Peaks, everyone. I am so excited to have you with us on the show because I'm here with my good friend, Kellee Khalil, the founder of Loverly. Kel, thank you for being here.
Jenna, always great to catch up with you.
Before we dive in case anyone doesn't know, can you give us a brief glimpse into Loverly and all of the great work your team is doing?
Yeah, sure. So Loverly is a website, mobile app, and book that is geared towards millennial couples planning their weddings. So we believe at Loverly the rules of wedding planning have completely changed and there are no rules. And you can create whatever you want for your dream celebration. And so we're here to make it easier and more fun. And we do that through our book and our website and our new app, which I'll tell you about.
I'm so glad you brought up the app because it just shows how far you guys have come with the virtual wedding planner. But before all of that, we'll dive into what it took to get you guys where you are today. Can you tell us about that first story of finding your first investors and then getting the first commitment and what that did for the business?
Sure. So I moved to New York in 2010, and I used to work in the bridal industry. And when I moved to New York, I basically hit reset on my life. I was in a completely new city. I didn't really have a network here, but I had this idea for Loverly. And I spent about 10 months really just building my network, kind of figuring out what it would take to build the product or be one of the product, the first vision of it. And those 10 months, there was a lot of networking. There was a lot of meeting with investors and trying to understand how you actually get, how you actually launch a technology business. And a lot of that has to do with getting the capital to do so. So I was really fortunate in that I connected, whether it was through Twitter or email or warm introductions, to some pretty awesome early stage investors who were entrepreneurs themselves who were kind of mentoring me. And I was checking in with them monthly and showing them what I was working on. And a lot of them were so impressed with kind of the progress of from idea to kind of prototype to here's, the beta. And when I actually, about a month before I closed the first commitment, I did a presentation to an angel group. And in that angel group, I think I got like 2 or 3 commitments from that. And I shared with some of my mentors that I had received some interest in funding the business. And I was so shocked to hear that I think it was like 4 of the people that had been mentoring me along the way were like, me too, I'm in. And so we closed our first $500,000 in June 2011, which was able to kind of give us the capital to really build the product to launch it on Valentine's Day 2012.
There's so many areas that I want to dive in there. The first one is real brief. When you mentioned that first 10 months, it was just you working. I actually reflected on that the other day, and it was such a sense of motivation for me because I was like, look what Kellee did, and she started small too. So thank you for that. And then the second part is when you were identifying those first investors, what were you looking for?
I was reaching out to people that weren't in the wedding industry, but rather in technology and adjacent industries. So, I met with one person who was who had a successful ad business and was really focused on optimization and sold his company for a lot of money. And so I knew that advertising was going to be part of our model. So I wanted to kind of get his feedback on, how I was structuring our business model or what I was thinking about. Another one was who is Anu from Female Founders Fund. She was just an angel investor at the time, and she had a very strong background in e-commerce. She had started an e-commerce company and had just helped her sister plan her wedding. So she ironically had just gone through the pain point and really understood it and got the concept right away. So she was another one. And then the third was Joanne Wilson, who is the founder of We Festival. And Joanne is just, an amazing supporter of female entrepreneurs. And so I was just kind of like getting on her radar, going back to her, getting her feedback. And the funny thing about Joanne is she said no the first 2 times I asked for capital. And the third time I came, she was just like, you are just so resilient. You will not take no for an answer. And I was like, nope. And so those were kind of the 3 that really helped kind of shape that first kind of round of funding.
When you think back to those times and think about entrepreneurs who are currently in that situation, what are some of the questions that you asked your investors that you think can be helpful for them?
I think the number one thing when you're going out and fundraising, especially if you're a first-time entrepreneur or you haven't raised any money for your business yet, was I wasn't actually asking for money. I was asking for advice and for feedback and asking them for introductions to other people that might be helpful to me. And I think that was kind of the key. Because a lot of times people go in, they meet an investor and immediately ask for money. And it's, I think it was Mark's sister that said, people don't invest in dots, they invest in lines. And so, it was about building those relationships. It was about going back to them and getting their feedback over time and, showing them that I took their feedback to heart and I listened and I was able to apply it and I was coachable. And I think that was one of the key learnings in that process, that it doesn't happen on the first meeting. I mean, I did have one investor that I met, that was like within 20 minutes, like, I'm in, how much do you want? And that was like not the normal situation. But he also did come from a recommendation of an investor who had already kind of committed. So that's, I think that's really important for entrepreneurs when they're fundraising, is that it doesn't happen on the first meeting.
And when you were going back to the second and third and fourth meetings with them, how did you evaluate the feedback that they were giving you?
That's a great question. A lot of times, if you're just going and meeting with investors, many of them will just give you feedback. Maybe they don't even understand your business, but they have their ideas or they have their, their experiences that maybe they're projecting stuff. And so, it's hard, if you're constantly listening to feedback, you'll kind of move around and you'll never stay focused. So I kind of use the rule of three. When I heard the same thing 3 times, I knew that I had to pay attention to it. So you're always listening and hearing what they're saying. But as far as like actionable implementation, I usually kind of wait until I heard like 2 or 3 people say the same thing and people that I trusted and respected.
And then one more thing on the fundraising experience. It's very well known that it's an extremely difficult time for entrepreneurs. What's the best advice you got on how to navigate it?
Man, I mean, we're experiencing it now. As a business owner, if you're venture backed, you're always kind of fundraising. And so I think the number one thing is not to take things personally and not to kind of make it feel like it's unique to you and your business. I'm not saying not to listen and, take feedback, but it's not a personal thing. Some investors may have invested in if you're an e-commerce company and they've made 3 e-commerce investments, they didn't work out. Maybe they're just burned from it, right? So it has nothing to do with you. And so I think that that's the most important thing, is not to take it personally.
I love that. It is really important, especially because some investors may not even invest in your vertical, even if they're your friend. So it has nothing to do.
Totally.
And so for our second story, which was a huge milestone for Loverly, which is where you are now, tell us about moving into your second office and what it meant for the brand.
Yeah, so our second office, which is basically our second address, right, was our first dedicated space, which was the first time that we had a place that we could, the whole team was there, that we were able to kind of decorate and put paint the walls pink and make it really our own. And that just felt really special because it felt like we were a real company. We weren't just working at a co-working space, borrowing desks from someone, but we actually had our own home.
When you say real company too, makes me think of something that a lot of founders experience, and I imagine you also did because it was all you in the beginning. You chose to be a solo founder and build everything on your own. How did you navigate it from being, I do everything by myself, to I have a team, I'm going to learn to delegate these tasks?
I'm still learning to delegate right now. It's hard. Some things... as an entrepreneur, you can't help but want to control all things, and you can't. And so you got to hire great people that you trust and let them do their job. And so, there's been a lot of mistakes made along the way. I think that it's a learning curve. Like, you can't be prepared for it.
Well, I think anytime it comes to hiring, is a learning curve. And something you shared with me previously that really stood out is whether you've hired someone already or you're in the process of hiring them and you have a gut feeling that it might not be the right fit, you've got to stick with that.
You got to listen to it. And also, I think early on I made some mistakes. Like, I hired some friends that, I was like, oh, this is great, they'll be awesome. And, in the beginning it seems really fun and frictionless. And then when it becomes a real company, and by a real company, then that dynamic kind of shifts. And so, I learned it's probably not the best thing to hire friends. You want to hire people that you think that you'll get along with and you'll like, but you don't want that to cloud your judgment. And then also, the biggest hire that I made, which I've talked about before, is our president and COO, Peggy. She's been in the game for 25 years, so she knows how to hire. And so I really lean on her a lot for helping us to define the role and make sure that they're a good fit. I'm great at the cultural kind of analysis, like, will they be a good fit on the team? But as far as like skill set, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you get duped. And sometimes you'll be surprised. You'll have someone come in and, they start at, just in this job, and you can see them grow into other roles. At a startup in particular, you really need someone who is comfortable with discomfort. So, there's a lot of challenges, things that are really hard. So as long as if they have a high threshold for discomfort and they like that and that's where they thrive, I think that's a pretty good indicator that they'll do well.
I'd love to dive into two areas of that. First, we always talk about Peggy, so I have to meet her in person. But
You do.
I'd love to know when you were making that decision, Kellee, and you reached out to her, how did you pitch Loverly to her as a baby startup when she had so much industry experience?
So it's a really interesting way that we met. And I think that this is actually probably one of the best hires I've made, and the reason why is probably about the process. So I met her because she was an investor in Loverly through an investment she made in the Female Founders Fund. And I met with her just as a casual, you have digital media experience. I'd love to kind of get your feedback on what we're doing and, see how she can help, just like as a meet and greet. And when I got there, we had a breakfast together, I realized, wow, this woman knows what she's talking about. And before I left that meeting, I was like, can you be an advisor? I tried to get her involved somehow, in a formal capacity. So she became an advisor, and then I realized I was calling her every single day. And then I was like, okay, maybe you should be a consultant. So I'm paying you for your time. And then then we did a 90-day consultancy. And in that period, it became very clear to me that I needed her, in a major way. And so that was kind of the progression from advisor to consultant to, full-time hire. And so it was a very organic process. It wasn't like I went in with a hard sell. It was more of building a relationship because I am a sole founder, bringing her on was really bringing on a partner. And so there's, a need to develop that trust and see how we work together. And, in the beginning, our working relationship was a lot of butting heads and then kind of figuring out how to communicate, what are our different styles. And so that kind of interim period when she was an advisor and a consultant allowed us to kind of get a groove. And, it's still always improving.
What's the best way, Kellee, whether it's with a partner or just another member on your team, to approach working styles and figuring out, okay, this really works for me, this doesn't work as much? How do you guys do that?
I mean, I think that Peggy and I worked out our working styles. It was kind of the hard way. We were butting heads, and and then we finally sat down. We're like, what is going on here? And we realized the way that we transfer information is very different. I'm a very auditory person. You can tell me something and I'll remember it. I don't need to write it down. That's how I learn, by hearing, right, and by talking. Whereas she's very methodical, where she wants things written down, she wants to read them, she wants to review them, she wants to ask questions. And once we kind of figured that out, then we realized, okay, we were actually saying the same things, we just weren't communicating in the right way. And so that's how we figured it out. I don't know if there's a best practice on that. Maybe early on you can ask people what they prefer, but that has been, for me, kind of one of the biggest learnings. I mean, I didn't even know that about myself. I didn't realize. She's like, well, where's the document on that? I'm like, I don't have a document. It's all in here, And she's like, but you know so much about this one random thing. And I was like, because that's how I process things. It's probably no surprise that I don't like to actually read books. I listen to audio tapes because that's how my brain processes information a lot more effectively. And I would probably say she's probably the opposite. So that's how we figured it out.
I love that, and I think it really translates into your whole team. And you mentioned cultural fit, which is an area that you focus on when you're hiring. Founders always tell me about that, but how do you really know if they're going to gel, and once they're on, not just for a month, but 2 months or 3 months, that you'll still feel the same way?
I think you never really fully know. And one of the things that we learned is that there's kind of a 90-day window. Within the first 90 days, you kind of get a sense of if someone's going to work out or not. You can kind of tell, because that's when the honeymoon phase kind of wears off, and you see them in their kind of, in their, in the groove, and you get a sense of who they really are. Because when you first start, it's exciting and everything's new, and you're just getting acquainted with the team members and the job. And I think at 90 days, you kind of get a gut check to say, how are things working out? Also, I mean, I've kind of gotten to the point, Loverly is now 4 years old, and I've realized for myself, it's yes, I want to build a massive company. Yes, I want it to be super successful, but I want to come into the office every single day and like the people I work with. And I want them to have a high quality of life, and I want them to love what they're doing. And I think that's a different person than someone who's coming because they want to make a lot of money, or someone that wants to, climb a corporate ladder. It's a very different thing. So starting to realize, what are the core values? What do the people you're hiring value for their lives? And hopefully that's kind of where you get some of that cultural alignment.
Wow, that's fantastic. And when you think of that and growing the team previously and in the future, how do you feel that you've evolved as a founder, leading them and having everyone work together?
Man, running a company beats you up, and in the best way possible. Like, it really forces you to face things that you wouldn't normally have to face, right? Because if things aren't working, it always, the buck stops with you. So you can't blame, if a product doesn't work, or if, something's not, there's operational issues, like, you can't blame the people. It all comes down to you. So it's really forced me to, one, realize, as an entrepreneur, part of it is that you think you know everything, which is why you think you can do it. It's this like blind naivete, but then with reality sits in, and you keep smacking your head against the wall, you realize, okay, maybe I got to try something new. So I think that one, I've tried to listen more. I'm still working on that. I think the other thing is also being able to delegate, let people do, like, don't micromanage. I think that's kind of something I've learned. Like, if you're really on top of people, it makes them frustrated because they can't feel like they can't get anything done, and that it instills fear rather than like creativity. Am I going to lose my job? Kelly's watching everything I'm doing. And so
Just
I think
sit right next to them.
Yeah, well, I am sitting right next to everyone right now. They all hear this, and it's also transparency. Like, I try and be as open as possible. Like, having conversations, in front of them. I want them to be a part of the process.
When you think of the transparency too, I've always wondered about this. How much do you share? And I hate to say this because you're my friend and I don't want you absorbing anything, but what do you have to absorb for yourself so the team is not stressed?
I think that, it's always a balance. You want your team to feel like they're clear on what the goals and the objectives are for the business. How, what's the state of the business? Are we hitting our numbers? And so that we do that by kind of weekly town halls. And everyone, I think it's important from, well, we haven't done it in the last couple of weeks because of summer, but, being able to share, like, hey, the sales team closed this, or the product team launched that, and being able to share in our successes. And I think that's really important because everyone then feels, more cohesive as a team because they all know what everyone's doing and how it's kind of going to the greater good of, and hitting the goals of the business. I think that's really important.
And when you're focusing on those celebrations, how do you view celebration of goals? Because I know you and I know how driven you are by big, big goals.
That's actually something that Peggy was kind of instilled, that we need to celebrate a little more when we hit our goals. And with our new product that we have right now, it's been really fun. We've been hitting our numbers every single month, but like halfway through the month, we're not there yet. We start to freak out, and everyone kind of gets heads down, and then somehow, like, we all kind of get around it, and we get it done. I think celebration, micro celebrations, it's not like we're having like weekly happy hours or anything like that, but and I think that it's something where we've tried to do more, but then there's the balance of, like, you don't want to celebrate every single thing that happens, right? Because then it's always a moving target.
I love that. And I know your moving target is massive. And I'm really glad that you mentioned the wedding planner app because I'd love to be able to chat about that. And before we even dive into it, if you can explain your experience getting there and how you guys launched, I'd love that. I love this story.
Sure. So we launched this virtual wedding planning app, which basically is an app on your iPhone. You download it, you can start chatting with a virtual planner, and we're offering wedding planning services at an affordable price point, starting at $49, and $399 is our kind of main package, and then a custom package based up from there. And the idea for the virtual wedding planner actually came out of a failure. When we raised our Series A in 2014, we were generating all of our revenue off of advertising sales, and investors were saying, listen, advertising is great, but what's kind of the next vision of the business? You need to find another more strategic, scalable business model. So we kind of did a little bit of an analysis of the industry and kind of what our core strengths were, and we decided that we wanted to try our hand at e-commerce. The idea of content commerce seemed, very, very glamorous. So we launched a test for 120 days of a little e-commerce shop selling little white dresses and bridesmaids dresses and kind of wedding trinkets. And we put a customer service chat on the website to help service people. They had questions about pricing or shipping times. And a majority of the questions we were getting were not about the products, but rather asking us for advice on certain things, like find me a photographer, or I love the flowers, that the bridesmaid's holding. Like, where do I get those? And so that was one indication. The second thing was anytime anyone I knew got engaged, whether it was a friend of a friend, they would be like, oh, talk to Kellee. She runs a wedding website. And they'd be like, oh my God, Kellee, like, do you have a recommendation for a venue in Chicago? And I'm like, no, that's not what I do. Like, go to my website, read our content, but like, I'm not a wedding planner. Like, that's not what I do. Yes, I know about wedding trends, but that's not what I do. And I realized maybe that is what we should be doing, right? We spent 4 years building this brand. We have all this content that we're putting out every single day that's guiding people on how to plan their weddings. And we have all this inspiration, that people are going to and using as kind of the blueprint of their wedding. Maybe that's what people want. And so we did a small test last summer, threw up a landing page saying, meet your virtual planner, fill out the form if you want to get a free consultation. And people were filling it out. People were interested in it. So that's kind of where the idea for it came. And then we launched version 1 early April. And since then have been iterating on it, testing our messaging, our pricing, what the offering is. And it's about 90 days old, and so far so good.
So many areas that I want to dive in there. The first with you and how you approached it with the team. You shared that you just kind of had this moment where you're like, okay, maybe this is what we should be doing. What happened after you realized that?
So we realized e-commerce wasn't going to work, and that was a really hard thing because we had grown the team to staff against it. We grew the team to about 22 full-time employees. Right now we're 10, 9.5. We have consultants and whatnot. So that was really one of the hardest growing pains, was realizing, hey, we bet wrong. We failed on this initiative, and we weren't getting the success that we needed, so we needed to scale down the team. So that was the first thing, is saying, hey, this idea is not going to work. Let's go back to our core, which is content, while we test. We test these other things. So it was a rough 4 months, and even since then, learning as we go, kind of figuring out, is this the right product to build? And what we've been trying to do is have micro tests. So it's like every single week or day, we're trying different messaging. I actually, like last night, I was in our wedding planning dashboard, and as brides were coming in, we usually service them from 9 a.m. to, I think, like 7 p.m. Eastern time. But we'd come in the office in the morning, and we would see, a bunch of brides in the dashboard that had signed up. So last night, an example was, let me just see if I'm online during that time, what happens. And, that was like an example of like testing, like if we engage with them right away, is it going to make a difference in conversion? And it's really, and there was some positive feedback from that. So just kind of those little micro tests where, I that wasn't even formalized. I was like, I'm just going to see. And then I was like, oh wait, this is actually working. So stuff like that. It's like these little tests along the way.
I think the little tests are really great, and it sounds like Peggy and you work so awesome on this front because she's super methodological in keeping track of all that. How do you guys decide what to test, when to test it, why to test it?
Yeah, every single day at 10 a.m. we have a stand-up between Peggy, myself, our head of engineering, and person that runs kind of the concierge service, who's kind of actually the one talking to the brides. And we literally look at the numbers from the day before. We looked at, the top of the funnel and like every step along the way, what changed today versus yesterday. And we look at the trends week over week and month over month. And sometimes we miss things. Like we don't notice that a number is kind of falling. It's like, oh, it fell a little bit. And then we look at the weekly trends. We're like, okay, we must have done something different here. So it's really that it comes down to kind of being maniacally focused on these specific KPIs and then checking in on them every single day.
How many KPIs do you guys have?
For the concierge product, let me tell you right now.
Oh, we're getting accurate information right in the moment.
Yeah, obviously there's a funnel, but the things that we really care about, which is what we report back to our investors and things that we look at, there's really kind of 4 things, and they're all part of the same funnel. Like how many people downloaded the app, and of those people, how many registered, and of those registrations, how many of those people actually purchased a package. And then how many people chatted, and of those chats, how many people purchased a package. So it's like we run different kind of ratios based on those 4 things: download data, chat engagement, and conversions.
So two more questions for you on the wedding planner app, then I'll let you go. I could talk to you forever, as you know. The first one is when you think about the wedding planner in the long term, what do you see? Which areas are you most excited? See, look, there's a smile. What are you most excited about?
So our goal with Loverly is to be like the biggest wedding planner in the world. And using our technology and our app, and whether that's in the app or via text or on site, we want to streamline all that. Right now, it's only in the app. What I find to be really interesting and where I think there's a huge opportunity, and I know it's like a super buzzy, there's like buzzy words like chatbot or like AI, but we're in the beginning stages of building out a chatbot that's using artificial intelligence based on all the content and editorial that we've written in the last 3 years, and training this bot to be very Loverly-like and to answer questions for brides and help streamline. So my goal, what I'm excited about is how you can use technology and historical data, and whether it's in the form of, text or chat, and the power of AI to help streamline those things. And I'm not saying that you're going to have a bot planning your wedding. That's not what it is, but there are some efficiencies you can create when there's specific questions on, hey, what's the average cost of a florist in Chicago, right? It's like, boom, like those kind of things we can help with. And I think that's really interesting.
I'm really glad you mentioned the one part of it leading up to now, because my last question was, and it's been so much fun watching you grow Loverly since we got to run my very first interview, since we got to meet. Do you think you could have gone to the app and built it the way you are had you not had the years before?
No way. Definitely no way. It was definitely an evolution. I mean, I think also seeing that we raised our Series A with one product in mind and we staffed up against it, and really increased our burn, increased our overhead. And then when we're like, okay, we got to try this other product, we can't do it the same way we did it before. We need to be super lean. And I think what it's forced us to do is to be very focused on, okay, what are we trying to prove right now? And nothing else. Because when you're building a product, and in my early days, I think I overbuilt things. I had this vision, and without validating the assumptions, and maybe the product vision was correct, but the way it was set up wasn't. And you can over-architect these products, and you can have huge development cycles. And so instead, we do very, very tiny development cycles. I mean, literally, we're prototyping. Does this feel good? It does. Okay, cool. Let's zip it up and push it as an update. Rather than saying, we want to do this whole crazy thing, and it's going to take 4 months to build. Like, you don't know. And so it's forced us to be really lean in our development process and to always be focused on, is this achieving the one goal that we're looking to achieve?
What's so great about that, too, is you end up thinking that it's really the small things that lead up to the big one.
100%. That's exactly what it is. And so we're doing a lot of micro changes and looking at the data to figure out how do we optimize and create a more efficient, whether it's onboarding or user flow, or just overall experience for our customers.
I love that as a way to sorry, I'm going to choke here. I love that as a way to wrap up, because I think it puts grow in perspective, which is a theme for this month, that you can't build something heads down for a year and feel like, oh my God, it doesn't work. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'm so grateful.
It's like micro steps.
I'm so grateful, as always, that we got to have you on the show. What's the best way, Kel, for everyone to stay up to date with you? And if they are getting married or have friends or family who are getting married, how do they get on the app and get on Loverly?
Yes. So you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We're at Loverly. Or you can go to lover.ly. And more importantly, you can download our app in the App Store, the Virtual Wedding Planner, Loverly Virtual Wedding Planner. Download the app and start chatting with one of our virtual planners, and give us some feedback. Let us know what you think about it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.